Welcome to this interview series. My name is Christina Theodoraki. I'm editor of Smal Business Economics, an entrepreneurship journal, and I have a special honor today to interview Donald Kuratko, the Jack M. Gill Distinguished Chair and Professor of Entrepreneurship at Kelley School of Business at Indiana University in Bloomington. So Dr. K is considered to be a prominent scholar and entrepreneurial thought leader in the field of entrepreneurship. He has authored over 200 articles on different aspects of entrepreneurship and has considerably advanced the entrepreneurship field with his publications. He has published in several journals, such as Journal of Business Venturing, Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, Strategic Management Journal, and of course, Smal Business Economics. Dr. K has been selected as one of the top entrepreneurship professors in the United States and one of the top 20 entrepreneurship scholars all over the world. Dr. K has received several awards from the U.S. Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurship, the National Academy of Management, for his contributions and development to advancement the discipline of entrepreneurship. Under his leadership, Indiana University has been ranked first in entrepreneurship research and the first undergraduate and graduate business school of entrepreneurship. Their entrepreneurship program has been chosen as the 2023 national model of the USSB, the United States Association of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And today, Dr. K is going to tell us more about his new role of joining the editorial board of Smal Business Economics. First of all, I would like to welcome Dr. K and to testify the great honor to work with him on editing impactful entrepreneurship articles and advancing like this the entrepreneurship discussion and the field. So welcome, Don, and thank you for joining us for this interview series, and also thank you for accepting to share your insights on entrepreneurship with us and with our followers.
Well, thank you, Christina. It's an honor to be part of the journal since I have so much respect for it, and it's an honor to be here with you today. So thank you.
So starting my first question, Dr. K, could you please tell us how do you feel for becoming a small business economics editor?
I'm pretty excited. I've like I said, I've great respect for the journal. I've published a lot of articles in Smal Business Economics over the years, done reviewing for it over the years, and because of my respect for it, to be asked to be an editor was kind of an honor to me. I was really thrilled. So I'm excited to be joining the editorial team.
We're also excited from our side. And could you please tell us more about your philosophy of handling manuscripts? So from your experience all of these years in different journals, for example, the Journal of Technology Transfer, you have been handling a lot of manuscripts. What is your philosophy when you get a manuscript?
So the one thing I want to look for in a manuscript by the authors is what's the contribution they're making. A lot of people can do studies and do all kinds of quantitative analysis, but I want to know what is the particular contribution this paper is making, because as David Aldrich and as put in his article about publishing in Smal Business Economics, you really have to look at what is the value that we're trying to move the field forward. How would this contribution actually enhance the field of entrepreneurship in some way? So that's the very first thing that I would look for when I'm handling a manuscript.
Can you tell us more of what are your specific expertises of research areas? Could you specify in which topics you're more interested in? Right.
I think certainly my research for years has been in the field of corporate entrepreneurship and corporate innovation. So that's certainly one of my specialties. Also entrepreneurship education, because I've done some articles on that. And then I'm kind of scattered in some other areas as well, which looks at the entrepreneurial mindset. And some of the characteristics that go with that. And so those would be kind of my main areas that I try to focus on, some entrepreneurial decision-making as well. So those would be the areas that I think I have the better expertise to speak to.
Dr. Kay, please tell me, let me ask you a very tricky question that also challenges all of the editors of impactful and entrepreneurship journals. How you can take your decisions about how you can identify that a paper is impactful? How do you identify the impact of the research article, and what is an impactful research article in entrepreneurship for you?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's always elusive for all of us as editors to really make the call as to what is impactful, what's not. Of course, the old adage is you'll never really know until you look backwards and see if it had an impact. But what I try to do, as I mentioned, when I'm looking for what the contribution is, I'm trying to first look at whether the author has covered the literature to date. Has the author gone through carefully and outlined where the literature has stood over the last years and right up to date, and then to articulate to me carefully, so what's missing here? Why is this study now going to fit in and advance the field beyond what we already know? And I'm really a bug about that, because if they're just sort of replicating studies and telling me things that we already know, then my attitude is, I don't think that's moving the field. So if we want to define that as impactful, that's how I define it. It's moving the field, advancing in some way, not just replicating and tell me things that were already done in the literature. So that's really my major point of how I would distinguish what would be impactful versus what's not.
Can you tell us what are your expectations for authors who would like to submit to the journal?
Yeah, one of the things it's a good question. I think that one of the expectations I have is I want a professional document. One of the things that I always do with a manuscript is I go through and I double check to see of the articles they've cited in the text of the article, are they referenced properly at the end, and vice versa. And so when I get papers that have, let's say, 20, 22 citations that are not even mentioned in the references, or I go to the references and there's a bunch of articles that weren't even cited in the paper, to me, that's a sloppy paper, and that should not have been submitted because it lacks professionalism. I would expect as an editor, when I see a paper, it has been properly proofread. It's been checked for things like that, because you have to understand, first impression is when you see something like that, it diminishes immediately the value of the paper, immediately, because you feel like if the author did not take the time to do this in a professional way to make sure all the references, citations were correct, what else is wrong in this paper? And so it really, it starts you off as an editor in a very negative tone. And so I would plead with all authors, please, before you submit, go through the paper carefully and make sure what you're submitting to us as editors is truly professionally prepared.
As you have stressed what the author should avoid before submitting to the journal, can you now give us some of the advices to this author that wish to submit to the journal? From where to start?
Well, when they start, it's kind of going back to what we just talked about as far as how would the study advance the field? What particularly are they looking at in this study? If it's an empirical study, that's fine. Do they have a large enough sample that really makes a difference? If they're using a smaller sample, are they using a different type of methodology because they're going to delve deeper into that sample as opposed to a larger sample that they're using? So I really want the authors to think about that and think about, if I go through with this, can I demonstrate in this study that this paper really does advance the field and make an impact? And I want them to be careful, because I'm not against marginally moving something forward, but sometimes they see papers that are so marginal. there's very little advancement, but they're claiming it is because there's a gap. And so my question is, when they tell me there's a gap in the literature, that's fine, but why is that gap important to fill? They've got to explain that. And by the way, I'm victim of the same problem. I've had many of my papers rejected because I didn't do it that way for the journal, where they came back and said, you say you identified this gap, but you never really demonstrated why filling that gap is important. And so from my own mistakes, I would share that with authors. Make sure you're validating why we should fill that gap. And is it large enough that it does move the field? Those would be the things that I would tell the authors to do.
I would like to take this opportunity to ask you, because you are one of the top entrepreneurship scholars and educators in the world, and
Thank you.
I would like to share with us how do you feel to receive the 2023 USASB Model Entrepreneurship Program Award? How does it feel? And as an entrepreneurship educator, how this advanced identification of research topic, how do you conciliate your role of entrepreneurship educator to conduct more advanced societal problems, entrepreneurship research, and find probably some interesting ideas to write about and advance the research discussion?
So the first question was about the award. The award was a great honor and a great thrill because I look at it as a team award. It's really an award for our entire program. And the reason we were chosen is really because of our research faculty. We've got tremendous faculty here with, Dr. Jeff McMullen, Dr. Greg Fisher, Dr. Blake Mathias, Dr. Sophie Bach, Dr. Aaron McKinney, Dr. Regan Stevenson. I mean, we've got some phenomenal research faculty. So our team is large and certainly globally recognized. So the award, I think, recognizes our whole program. And to me, that's a team award and really thrilled me a lot that I could share that with our whole team here. We're still celebrating. so we're pretty excited about it. And it just, to us, it was like a kind of a stamp of approval that everything we've been doing is now recognized and held up as a model, which I'm very proud of. So I think the next question you're asking was some of the areas of research that we're pursuing. We feel that here at Indiana University, I forgot to mention Dr. David Aldrich too on our team. I forgot. Oh my gosh, David will kill me. Forgot to mention him, who's talk about world renowned. He is world renowned. So with our great faculty, one of the things that we're doing is I always say that we are really trying to sort of push the boundaries with our research. We're trying to extend, like we're talking about, impactful research. I feel like our faculty really work in that outer domain, trying to push the boundary and extend the field and extend certain areas. And every one of our faculty members has a particular, disciplinary area in entrepreneurship that they're pretty well known for. But they continue to push that envelope, which I think is great. And so, there's a lot of new areas we're looking at. We're looking at, I know, Dr. Greg Fisher and myself and Dr. Regan Stevenson, with two of our one's a former PhD student, one will be former, as he's just accepted his role for next year. But we've been working on a concept called trying to break down the entrepreneurial mindset into pieces. And one piece we came up with this concept of entrepreneurial hustle. And we've all been pretty excited about it. We published a couple of papers about it. We have just developed a scale to help researchers measure hustle, which we are going to release that paper soon to be looking at a referee journal. So we hope it'll get published eventually, but it's a neat area where we're pushing the boundaries on, which we think is pretty exciting. And that's just one example. Dr. Jeff McMullen is in the area of entrepreneurial decision-making, pushing some really interesting boundaries. So I think that's what we're looking at. And I would tell authors out there, that's kind of what we're doing. But for authors that are out there saying, well, gee, what is something interesting to look at? I mean, where's the field going? I've often said there's a couple of things, and I'm not the prophetic expert to know exactly where the field is going to go, but I think you want to keep your eyes on artificial intelligence. It's only going to have an impact on the world, but it's going to have an impact on entrepreneurs in a lot of ways. I don't have all the answers, but I think our young researchers can start to watch that carefully and maybe see some areas there that would be really interesting to help us understand the future. I think my particular area of corporate entrepreneurship is going to evolve and change because, again, of technologies and things that we're witnessing happening in the world today. Existing organizations that want innovation in their companies are going to have to experiment with new ways and new means of doing innovations. And so I think those of us that are going to study corporate entrepreneurship and corporate innovation, that's going to be a changing area to keep an eye on. So obviously I'm biased because that's my area. And I think the world of entrepreneurship education as a whole, we have to keep an eye on and see what are the new methods that are coming into play to help our students and your students, everyone's students, learn the field better. and really become better prepared. As if they're, more on the practitioner side, how do we prepare them to be practitioners? In our PhD programs, how do we prepare them to be better scholars in the field? So those are some of the things I would say to young authors, young scholars, starting to look at the field. And certainly, I'm sure they've got particular areas too they want to look at, and that I would agree. I mean, sometimes I hear about some of the young scholars' topics, and I think, wow, that's really interesting. So I think our young minds are right now doing a really interesting and effective approach to the field.
Thank you very much, Dr. K, for sharing with us all these advices. I think I take notes about all the inspiring insights you shared with us today. And I see that entrepreneurship is having the eyes open to the changes of the society, trying to identify some new concept that emerge, new phenomenon, and also take risks. And I think as the Small Business Economics Journal is one of the journal and entrepreneurship journals that also take risks to open research discussion and advance the research field.
I think that's a great point, Christina. I think journals have got to be, that's an excellent point. I wish I thought of that, because journals have got to, in the field of entrepreneurship, and I know Small Business Economics does do this, I agree. Journals have got to be open to some of the new methodologies, new topics, new ways. Otherwise, we're going to be like the old, management journals where we're just kind of replicating the same studies. That's not the field of entrepreneurship. We're dynamic, we're exciting, we're changing. That's the field of entrepreneurship. So we as scholars and our journals have to be the same way. So you raised a great point, a really great point.
Thank you very much for this comment, Dr. K. And on behalf of the SBEJ editorial board, David Aldridge and Christina Gooder, our editors-in-chief, I would like to welcome you again for joining the SBEJ family. And we're very much looking forward to recognize, to publish impactful papers for the journal and advance the entrepreneurship field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. It's been an honor.